Have you ever wondered why Family Guy has become the internet's unofficial lullaby? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, chaotic, and surprisingly comforting world of Quahog, Rhode Island, where nothing makes sense, and somehow that's exactly what our brains need to drift off to sleep. From Peter's ridiculous schemes to Stewie's world domination plots, we'll explore every corner of the Griffin family universe that has helped millions fall asleep over the past 2 decades. But first, let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually paid attention to a Family Guy episode from start to finish? If you're like most people, you probably can't remember, because this show has transcended traditional viewing. It's become background noise, comfort food for your ears, a familiar chaos that somehow brings peace to restless minds across the globe. The phenomenon of falling asleep to Family Guy isn't just coincidence. There's actually a psychological explanation for why this particular animated sitcom has become the go-to choice for nighttime viewing. The show operates on what I call controlled chaos. While the plots are completely unpredictable and often nonsensical, the characters remain consistent in their absurdity. Your brain recognizes the patterns even when the content is random, creating a perfect storm of familiarity and unpredictability that helps quiet anxious thoughts. Let's start our journey through Family Guy lore with the patriarch himself, Peter Griffin. This beer-loving, chicken-fighting, scheme-hatching father has been the center of countless storylines that range from mildly ridiculous to absolutely insane. Peter's character represents the everyman taken to impossible extremes. He works at a brewery, loves television, struggles with his weight, and has an adversarial relationship with his teenage daughter. These are relatable elements wrapped in layers of cartoon absurdity. One of the most enduring aspects of Peter's character is his ongoing feud with Ernie the Giant Chicken. This rivalry began over an expired coupon and has escalated into epic battle sequences that destroy entire city blocks. The chicken fights serve as a perfect metaphor for how Family Guy operates. What starts as something mundane and everyday transforms into spectacular chaos, yet viewers accept it as normal within the show's universe. Peter's job history alone could fill hours of content. He's worked at the happy-go-lucky toy factory, tried his hand at various entrepreneurial ventures, and somehow always ends up back at the Pucket Brewery. His work relationships, particularly with his friends Cleveland, Joe, and Quagmire, form the backbone of many episodes. These friendships represent a kind of arrested development, where grown men engage in childish activities and conversations, creating a comfort zone that many viewers find soothing. Speaking of Peter's friends, each one represents a different aspect of suburban male friendship taken to cartoon extremes. Cleveland Brown, before moving to his own spin-off show, was the voice of reason in the group, though his definition of reasonable was still pretty skewed. Joe Swanson brings physical comedy through his wheelchair-bound police officer character, often engaging in activities that would be impossible for someone with his disability, which the show treats as completely normal. Then, there's Glenn Quagmire, the pilot with an insatiable appetite for romantic encounters. Quagmire's character serves as the show's id, expressing desires and behaviors that are completely inappropriate, but delivered in such an over-the-top manner that they become cartoon villainy rather than realistic threats. His famous giggity giggity catchphrase has become part of internet culture, often used ironically to reference something vaguely suggestive. The Griffin household itself is a character in the show. This typical suburban home has been destroyed and rebuilt countless times, serving as the stage for domestic chaos that somehow always resets to normal by the next episode. The living room, with its familiar brown couch and television, has become an iconic setting that viewers associate with comfort and routine. Lois Griffin represents the long-suffering wife archetype, but with layers of complexity that unfold over multiple seasons. Her wealthy background, her brief career as a model, and her occasional outbursts of violence create a character who's both nurturing and dangerous. Lois serves as the family's moral center, though her morality is often compromised by the show's need for comedy. Her relationship with Peter showcases a marriage that defies all logic, yet somehow works within the show's universe. The Griffin children each represent different aspects of growing up in modern America, filtered through the show's twisted lens. Meg Griffin, the teenage daughter, exists primarily as the family's punching bag. Her character represents every awkward teenager's worst fears amplified to ridiculous proportions. The family's treatment of Meg borders on cruel, yet it's presented in such an exaggerated manner that it becomes absurdist comedy rather than realistic family dysfunction. Chris Griffin, the teenage son, embodies adolescent confusion and hormones. His character often serves as Peter's mini-me, inheriting his father's capacity for poor decision-making while maintaining a certain innocent charm. Chris's storylines often explore themes of identity, attraction, and the awkwardness of growing up, but always through the show's comedic filter. But perhaps no character has captured audiences' imagination quite like Stewie Griffin, the infant with the British accent and dreams of world domination. Stewie represents pure ambition, untempered by experience or wisdom. His elaborate schemes for taking over the world, or eliminating his mother, provide endless entertainment, while also serving as commentary on human nature's darker impulses. Stewie's relationship with Brian the dog creates some of the show's most compelling storylines. Their friendship transcends species and age, representing an idealized relationship between two intelligent beings who understand each other completely. Brian serves as Stewie's confidant, partner in crime, and occasionally his voice of reason, though Brian's own flaws often make him an unreliable moral guide. Brian Griffin deserves special attention as perhaps the most complex character in the Family Guy universe. As an anthropomorphic dog who walks upright, drives a car, and engages in adult relationships, Brian represents the show's complete abandonment of logical consistency. He's a failed novelist, a liberal activist, and an alcoholic, creating a character who embodies both aspiration and failure. The show's use of cutaway gags has become its signature storytelling device. These random flashbacks, fantasy sequences, and non-sequitur moments serve multiple purposes. They allow the writers to explore any topic or reference any piece of pop culture without worrying about narrative consistency. For viewers trying to fall asleep, these cutaways create a dreamlike quality where anything can happen, and often does. Family Guy's relationship with pop culture is both parasitic and symbiotic. The show references everything from obscure television commercials to major historical events, creating a shared cultural experience for viewers. These references serve as comfort food for the brain, triggering recognition and nostalgia even when the context is completely absurd. The show's treatment of time and continuity is particularly noteworthy for sleep viewing. Characters can die and return to life, major life changes can be reversed without explanation, and the family's economic situation fluctuates wildly from episode to episode. This lack of consequences creates a consequence-free environment, where viewers don't need to worry about long-term character development or ongoing plot threads. Seth MacFarlane's voice work deserves recognition for contributing to the show's sleep-friendly qualities. His performance as multiple characters creates a consistent vocal landscape that becomes familiar and comforting over time. The way he delivers Peter's lines, Stewie's sophisticated vocabulary, and Brian's neurotic observations creates distinct character voices while maintaining an underlying consistency that helps viewers relax. The show's approach to controversial topics through cartoon abstraction makes it perfect for background viewing. Serious subjects are processed through layers of absurdity until they become manageable, non-threatening content. This filtering effect allows viewers to engage with complex themes without the emotional weight that might keep them awake. Family Guy's musical elements also contribute to its sleep-friendly nature. From Conway Twitty performances to original songs like Surfin' Bird, the show incorporates music in unexpected ways that create variety within familiarity. These musical interludes serve as natural breakpoints in the narrative flow, creating rhythmic patterns that complement the relaxation process. The show's animation style strikes a perfect balance between detailed enough to be interesting and simple enough to not be overstimulating. The character designs are iconic yet basic, allowing viewers to recognize what's happening without needing to focus intently on visual details. This visual simplicity makes it ideal for peripheral viewing as you drift off to sleep. Supporting characters like Herbert the elderly neighbor, the evil monkey in Chris's closet, and Death himself create a rich universe that extends beyond the Griffin family. These recurring characters provide continuity and familiarity, while also serving as sources of unexpected humor and comfort. The show's handling of social issues through satirical exaggeration creates a safe space for processing real-world anxieties. By taking serious topics and pushing them to absurd extremes, Family Guy allows viewers to engage with difficult subjects in a non-threatening way. This processing can actually be therapeutic for people trying to quiet their minds before sleep. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Memes, reaction GIFs, and quotable moments from the show have become part of online communication. This cultural penetration means that falling asleep to Family Guy connects viewers to a broader community experience, creating a sense of shared comfort and belonging. The show's production history includes periods of cancellation and revival, creating a mythology around its own existence. Fans who supported its return feel a personal investment in its success, making the viewing experience more emotionally satisfying. This investment translates into comfort when using the show as sleep aid, as viewers feel they're supporting something they helped save. As we wrap up our journey through Family Guy lore, it's worth considering why this particular show has achieved such a unique cultural position. In a world full of stress, uncertainty, and serious problems, Family Guy offers a space where nothing has permanent consequences, where the absurd is normal, and where even the worst situations somehow work out in the end. The show's genius lies not in its individual jokes or storylines, but in its creation of a universe where chaos and comfort coexist. For millions of viewers, the Griffin family's problems make their own seem manageable, while the show's predictable unpredictability provides just enough mental stimulation to quiet anxious thoughts without preventing sleep. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone who's discovered the show through its reputation as internet comfort food, Family Guy continues to serve as a bridge between consciousness and sleep, a familiar voice in the darkness that reminds us that tomorrow, like every Family Guy episode, is a fresh start, where anything is possible and nothing really matters. Sweet dreams, and remember, we all live in Quahog in our hearts, where the beer is cold, the chicken fights are epic, and Peter Griffin's laugh echoes through eternity. What if I told you that underneath all the random cutaway gags and crude humor, Family Guy has been building one of the most intricate and bizarre mythologies in television history? Tonight, we're diving deep into the hidden lore that connects everything from Stewie's time travel adventures to the cosmic horror lurking beneath Quahog's seemingly normal surface. Get comfortable, because this journey through the Griffin family's secret universe is going to be a wild ride that might just change how you see every episode forever. Let's start with something that seems innocent enough, but opens up an entire rabbit hole of implications. Have you ever noticed that Stewie Griffin isn't just a baby with advanced intelligence? He's actually a being that exists outside the normal flow of time itself. Throughout the series, we've seen him build time machines, travel to alternate dimensions, and even meet future versions of himself. But here's where it gets interesting. In several episodes, Stewie demonstrates knowledge of events that haven't happened yet, and sometimes he seems to be aware that he's in a television show. This isn't just random comedy writing. There's a consistent pattern that suggests Stewie might be some kind of temporal entity that chose to inhabit the body of a baby for reasons we're only beginning to understand. Think about it. He's built multiple time machines from scratch using household items. He's created clones, developed advanced weaponry, and even constructed interdimensional portals. No normal baby, no matter how intelligent, could accomplish these things without some kind of supernatural assistance or inherent cosmic power. The evidence becomes even more compelling when you consider his relationship with Brian. Unlike other family members who seem to understand Stewie only sporadically, Brian consistently communicates with him on an adult level. But Brian isn't just any dog. He's a talking dog who drives cars, writes novels, and has existential crises about the nature of reality. The fact that these two characters can communicate perfectly suggests they might both be operating on a different plane of existence than the rest of the family. Speaking of Brian, let's explore his own mysterious origins. He was found as a stray by the Griffin family, but his background remains largely unexplained. He drinks alcohol, smokes cigarettes, and engages in romantic relationships with humans. In several episodes, we've seen him question his own nature, and struggle with the absurdity of being a talking dog in a world where most animals don't speak. This existential awareness might be the key to understanding his true nature. There's a theory that Brian represents a bridge between the normal world and the supernatural elements that permeate Quahog. He's intelligent enough to recognize the strangeness around him, but trapped in a form that prevents him from fully participating in human society. His conversations with Stewie often touch on philosophical and scientific concepts that suggest both characters are aware of deeper truths about their reality. Now let's talk about Peter Griffin himself, because beneath his bumbling exterior lies something far more complex. Peter has survived explosions, falls from incredible heights, and injuries that should have killed him dozens of times over. He's also demonstrated superhuman strength in various episodes, lifting cars and fighting characters with obvious supernatural abilities. But more importantly, Peter seems to be a nexus point for the weird events that happen in Quahog. Everywhere Peter goes, reality seems to bend slightly. Characters break into musical numbers for no reason. People appear and disappear without explanation. The laws of physics become suggestions rather than rules. It's as if Peter's presence weakens the barriers between the normal world and something much stranger. This could explain why the Griffin family attracts so many bizarre situations and supernatural encounters. Consider the episode where Peter gains psychic powers, or the times he's been visited by supernatural entities. These aren't isolated incidents, but part of a larger pattern that suggests Peter might be unknowingly channeling some kind of cosmic energy. His simple-minded nature could be a protective mechanism that prevents him from fully comprehending his own power, because if Peter ever became truly aware of his abilities, the consequences could be catastrophic. Lois Griffin presents her own mysteries. On the surface, she's the long-suffering wife trying to keep her chaotic family together, but Lois has her own dark secrets and hidden depths. She comes from a wealthy family with connections that extend far beyond what we see on screen. Her father, Carter Pewterschmidt, isn't just rich. He's connected to military-industrial complexes and shadowy organizations that operate behind the scenes. Throughout the series, Lois has demonstrated skills and knowledge that suggest extensive training in areas most housewives would never encounter. She's fluent in multiple languages, skilled in combat, and has connections to criminal organizations. In several episodes, she's shown leading double lives that involve activities ranging from boxing to working with international intelligence agencies. These aren't random plot devices, but hints at a much larger story about who Lois really is and why she ended up with the Griffin family. There's also the question of how Lois manages to hold the family together despite the constant chaos. She seems to have an almost supernatural ability to adapt to whatever insane situation her family creates. Whether it's dealing with Stewie's death rays or Peter's latest scheme to destroy the neighborhood, Lois always finds a way to restore some semblance of normalcy. This suggests she might be operating with knowledge or abilities that go beyond what we see on the surface. The town of Quahog itself is a character in this strange mythology. It's supposedly a normal Rhode Island community, but the events that occur there on a regular basis defy all logic. The town has been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times. Its residents include everything from former Nazis to aliens to interdimensional beings. The mayor is a corrupt official who openly admits to criminal activities, yet somehow the town continues to function. What's really interesting is how quickly the residents of Quahog accept supernatural events. When a chicken fights Peter through half the town, destroying buildings and causing massive property damage, everyone just goes back to their normal lives afterward. When time travel events create paradoxes that should fundamentally alter reality, the town adapts without question. This suggests that Quahog exists in a state of flexible reality where the impossible becomes routine. The recurring locations in Quahog also hint at deeper mysteries. The Drunken Clam isn't just a bar. It's a place where characters regularly receive prophetic dreams and encounter supernatural entities. Quahog Elementary School has been the site of numerous reality-bending events. Even the Griffin house itself seems to exist partially outside normal space and time, with rooms that appear and disappear and basement areas that extend far beyond what the exterior structure should allow. Let's dive deeper into the show's treatment of death and resurrection, because Family Guy has a very loose relationship with mortality that suggests something profound about the nature of its reality. Characters die regularly, sometimes multiple times in the same episode, only to return without explanation. Brian has died and been brought back to life. Kenny McCormick from South Park has appeared in Family Guy, bringing his own resurrection mythology with him. This casual treatment of death isn't just a comedy device. It suggests that the characters exist in a reality where death is temporary or where multiple versions of the same character can exist simultaneously. Stewie has encountered alternate versions of himself and his family members from different timelines and dimensions. These aren't dreams or imagination sequences, but actual encounters with other versions of reality. The implications of this go far beyond simple comedy. If characters can die and return, if alternate versions of themselves exist in parallel dimensions, then the entire show might be taking place across multiple realities simultaneously. Each episode could be showing us events from different timelines or dimensions where slightly different versions of the characters exist. This would explain the show's inconsistent continuity and the way characters sometimes seem to forget major events from previous episodes. They're not forgetting. They're simply different versions of themselves who never experienced those events. The show isn't ignoring its own history. It's showing us glimpses of an infinite multiverse where every possible variation of the Griffin family's story plays out simultaneously. The religious and mythological elements in Family Guy also contribute to this deeper lore. The show has featured appearances by God, Jesus, the devil, and various other religious figures. These aren't parody versions, but actual supernatural entities who interact with the characters and influence events in Quahog. This suggests that the show's reality operates under a cosmology where divine and infernal forces are real and active. More intriguingly, these supernatural entities often seem to have specific interest in the Griffin family. God has personally intervened in their lives multiple times. Death himself has appeared as a character and formed relationships with family members. This level of cosmic attention suggests that the Griffins aren't just random people, but individuals who play important roles in some larger supernatural conflict or cosmic plan. The show's frequent use of cutaway gags might also be more than just random humor. These sequences often show Peter or other characters in completely different time periods, locations, or situations. What if these aren't imaginary scenarios, but glimpses of other realities where versions of these characters actually exist? The cutaway structure could be the show's way of revealing the multiverse that underlies its narrative. This interpretation would mean that every absurd cutaway gag is actually a window into an alternate dimension. Peter as a knight in medieval times isn't just a joke, it's a glimpse of a reality where a version of Peter actually lived during that era. The seemingly random nature of these sequences could be showing us how the barriers between dimensions occasionally thin, allowing characters to perceive events from parallel worlds. Cleveland Brown's spin-off show and eventual return to Family Guy takes on new significance in this context. His move to Virginia and subsequent return isn't just a narrative convenience, it's evidence of how characters can move between different versions of reality. The Cleveland show might have been showing us events from a dimension where Cleveland never moved back to Quahog, while his return to Family Guy represents a convergence of timelines. The relationship between Family Guy and other animated shows in the same universe adds another layer to this mythology. The Simpsons Crossover episode wasn't just a marketing stunt. It was a demonstration that these shows exist in connected realities. Characters can travel between Springfield and Quahog because these locations exist in the same multiverse, just in different dimensional frequencies. As we dive deeper into the show's lore, we start to see patterns that suggest a hidden intelligence behind the chaos. The seemingly random events that plague the Griffin family might actually be tests or challenges designed by cosmic forces to determine their worthiness for some greater purpose. Stewie's advanced intelligence, Brian's existential awareness, Peter's reality-warping presence, and Lois's mysterious background could all be pieces of a larger puzzle. The show's self-aware humor and frequent breaking of the fourth wall might be characters occasionally becoming conscious of their true nature as beings in a constructed reality. When characters acknowledge that they're in a television show, they might be experiencing moments of cosmic awareness where they perceive the true nature of their existence. This brings us to perhaps the most mind-bending aspect of Family Guy's hidden lore. The show might be depicting the gradual awakening of its characters to their true nature as multi-dimensional beings trapped in a television narrative. Each season, the characters become slightly more aware of the absurdity of their situations and the arbitrary nature of the rules governing their reality. Stewie's evolution from would-be world conqueror to time-traveling adventurer represents his growing understanding of his cosmic nature. Brian's increasing cynicism and existential crises reflect his awareness that he's trapped between worlds. Peter's adventures become more outlandish because he's unconsciously pushing against the boundaries of his reality. Lois's hidden depths suggest she's always been aware of the truth, but has been protecting her family from it. The true horror and beauty of Family Guy's lore lies in this gradual revelation that nothing is as it seems. What appears to be random comedy is actually a complex meditation on the nature of reality, identity, and consciousness. The Griffin family's bizarre adventures are their unconscious attempts to break free from the limitations of their constructed world and discover their true nature as cosmic entities playing out an eternal story across infinite dimensions. So the next time you watch Family Guy, pay attention to the details that seem like throwaway gags. Notice how death has no permanent meaning, how reality bends around the characters, how they sometimes seem aware of forces beyond their comprehension. You're not just watching a comedy show. You're witnessing the gradual awakening of beings who are slowly discovering that they exist in a reality far stranger and more wonderful than they ever imagined. This is the true lore of Family Guy. Hidden beneath layers of crude humor and random cutaways, a story about consciousness trying to understand itself across multiple realities and infinite possibilities. Sweet dreams. What if I told you that Family Guy was originally supposed to end after just 3 seasons, and that Seth MacFarlane almost died on September 11th, which completely changed the show's trajectory? The animated series that millions of people watch every day has some absolutely mind-blowing secrets hiding beneath its crude humor and cutaway gags that most fans have never heard about. I've spent countless hours diving deep into the production history, behind-the-scenes drama, and hidden connections that make Family Guy one of the most fascinating shows on television. From celebrity feuds that shaped entire storylines to animation techniques that revolutionized the industry, this show has more layers than you might imagine. Let me take you on a journey through the most incredible Family Guy secrets that will completely change how you watch the show. We're going to uncover everything from the real-life inspirations behind your favorite characters to the corporate battles that almost killed the series multiple times. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Stewie, Peter, or even Brian the same way again. First, let's talk about something that literally saved Seth MacFarlane's life and indirectly saved Family Guy from never existing. On September 11th, 2001, MacFarlane was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11, the first plane that hit the World Trade Center. He had a ticket and was scheduled to fly from Boston to Los Angeles that morning. The only reason he survived was because his travel agent gave him the wrong departure time, telling him the flight left at 8:15 when it actually left at 7:45. MacFarlane overslept, arrived at the airport, and discovered he had missed his flight by just 10 minutes. He was initially frustrated about missing the flight and having to reschedule his meetings in Los Angeles. It wasn't until he was sitting in the airport waiting area that he saw the news reports and realized the plane he was supposed to be on had crashed into the North Tower. This near-death experience profoundly impacted MacFarlane's approach to Family Guy. The show's later seasons began incorporating more political commentary and social satire, partly because MacFarlane felt he had been given a second chance to use his platform meaningfully. The controversial episodes that tackle everything from religion to politics can be traced back to this life-changing moment when MacFarlane realized how fragile life really is. But that's just the beginning of Family Guy's incredible origin story. The show itself was born from MacFarlane's college thesis film at the Rhode Island School of Design. He created a 9-minute animated short called The Life of Larry, featuring a character named Larry Cummings, who was essentially a prototype for Peter Griffin. The animation was crude, the jokes were simpler, but the DNA of Family Guy was already there. What's absolutely fascinating is that MacFarlane submitted this college project to the animation studio Hanna-Barbera, and they were so impressed they hired him immediately. He was just 22 years old and suddenly found himself working on shows like Johnny Bravo and Cow and Chicken. But MacFarlane had bigger dreams for his Larry character. He spent 2 years developing and refining the concept, eventually creating another short film called Larry and Steve, which featured the first appearance of a Brian-like dog character. This short caught the attention of Fox executives who were desperately looking for animated content to compete with The Simpsons. The network gave MacFarlane an unprecedented deal, making him the youngest executive producer in television history at age 24. The character inspirations go much deeper than most people realize. Peter Griffin wasn't just a random creation. He was actually based on a security guard that MacFarlane knew during his time working at Hanna-Barbera. This security guard had the same loud, obnoxious personality and even shared some of Peter's physical characteristics. MacFarlane has said in interviews that he would observe this guard's behavior and mannerisms, essentially using him as a real-life reference for what would become one of television's most iconic characters. Stewie Griffin's character has an even more complex origin story. Initially, MacFarlane envisioned Stewie as a completely different type of character. In the original concept, Stewie was going to be much more obviously evil and would have actually succeeded in some of his schemes to kill Lois. The character was inspired by the child villain from a 1970 seconds British film, but MacFarlane realized that having a baby actually commit murder would make the show too dark for network television. The decision to make Stewie more ambiguously evil and eventually more sympathetic was one of the best creative choices the show ever made. It allowed the character to evolve over multiple seasons, becoming less focused on matricide and more focused on time travel, world domination, and his complex relationship with Brian. This evolution wasn't planned from the beginning, but happened organically as the writers discovered what worked best for the character. Speaking of Brian, his character represents something unprecedented in animated television. While other shows had featured talking animals, Brian was the first cartoon dog to be treated as a complete intellectual equal to the human characters. MacFarlane made a conscious decision to never explain how Brian learned to talk or why he's so intelligent compared to other dogs in the show's universe. This creative choice was actually controversial within the animation industry because it broke the traditional rules of cartoon logic. Most animated shows establish clear parameters for their fantastical elements, but Family Guy deliberately leaves Brian's abilities unexplained. This ambiguity allows the character to function as both comic relief and serious dramatic foil, depending on what the story requires. The show's distinctive cutaway gag structure wasn't part of the original concept either. In the early episodes, Family Guy followed a more traditional sitcom structure with linear storytelling. The famous random cutaways that interrupt the main plot were actually added later when MacFarlane realized they could use these moments to explore more surreal and experimental types of humor. These cutaways became the show's signature element, but they also created massive production challenges. Each cutaway requires additional character designs, backgrounds, and sometimes entirely different animation styles. A single episode might feature dozens of different mini-scenes that have nothing to do with the main plot, essentially making every Family Guy episode like 3 or 4 different shows combined into one. The voice acting process reveals another fascinating layer of the show's complexity. Seth MacFarlane voices 4 of the main characters: Peter, Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. What most people don't realize is that he records all of these voices in different sessions to maintain consistency. He can't switch between the voices quickly enough during regular recording sessions, so each character's dialogue is recorded separately and then edited together. MacFarlane has mentioned that Peter Griffin's voice is the most physically demanding because it requires him to strain his vocal cords to achieve that distinctive gravelly tone. After long recording sessions, MacFarlane sometimes loses his natural speaking voice temporarily because of the physical stress of performing Peter's dialogue. The show's relationship with censorship has created some of the most interesting behind-the-scenes stories in television history. Family Guy pushes boundaries constantly, but there's actually a sophisticated system of negotiations between the writers and network censors. The writers deliberately include jokes that they know will be rejected, using them as bargaining chips to keep the jokes they really want. This strategy has allowed Family Guy to get away with content that would never make it onto other network shows. The censors focus their attention on the obviously problematic material, which gives the writers cover to include more subtle but equally controversial content. It's essentially a game of misdirection that happens during every episode's production process. One of the most significant moments in Family Guy history happened when the show was actually canceled by Fox in 2002 after just 3 seasons. The network executives felt the show was too expensive to produce and wasn't attracting enough viewers in key demographics. This cancellation seemed like the end of the story, but something unprecedented happened next. The show's reruns on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim block became incredibly popular, attracting larger audiences than the original Fox broadcasts had achieved. Simultaneously, the Family Guy DVD sales broke records for animated television releases. Fans were literally buying seasons of a canceled show faster than DVDs of shows that were still in production. This combination of strong cable ratings and exceptional DVD sales convinced Fox to bring Family Guy back from the dead, making it the first canceled series in television history to be revived based primarily on home video performance. The revival created a new business model that other networks began copying, proving that traditional ratings weren't the only way to measure a show's value. The resurrection of Family Guy also changed how the show approached storytelling. When MacFarlane returned to production, he knew the show had been given an unlikely second chance, and this awareness influenced the writing in subtle but important ways. The characters became more self-aware, the jokes became more metatextual, and the show began directly addressing its own cancellation and revival in various episodes. Behind the scenes, the animation process for Family Guy utilizes techniques that most viewers never notice, but which significantly impact the show's distinctive look. Unlike many other animated series that use traditional cell animation or simple digital techniques, Family Guy employs a hybrid approach that combines hand-drawn character animation with digitally created backgrounds and effects. This hybrid technique allows the animators to create more dynamic camera movements and complex visual gags than would be possible with purely traditional methods. The show's famous chicken fights, elaborate musical numbers, and surreal cutaway sequences all rely on this sophisticated blend of old and new animation technologies. The writing room for Family Guy operates differently from most television shows because of the unique challenges created by the cutaway structure. The writers have to create 2 different types of content for every episode: the main storyline that follows traditional narrative rules, and the cutaway material that can be completely disconnected from reality. This dual writing process means that Family Guy episodes are actually much more complex to construct than they appear on screen. The writers have to ensure that the cutaways don't disrupt the pacing of the main story, while also making sure that each mini-scene within the cutaways has its own complete comedic arc. It's like writing a regular television episode while simultaneously writing dozens of very short comedy sketches. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond just entertainment. Family Guy has influenced internet meme culture more than almost any other television show, with countless jokes, phrases, and visual gags becoming viral content across social media platforms. The Surfin' Bird episode alone generated thousands of remixes, parodies, and tribute videos from fans around the world. This cultural influence wasn't accidental but resulted from MacFarlane's deliberate decision to make the show's humor as quotable and shareable as possible. The cutaway structure naturally creates bite-sized pieces of content that work perfectly for online sharing, essentially making every episode a collection of potential viral moments. The business side of Family Guy reveals how successful the show has become beyond just television ratings. The merchandise empire includes everything from action figures to video games, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue annually. The show's characters have appeared in commercials, theme park attractions, and even academic studies about animation and comedy. What makes this commercial success particularly interesting is that it happened despite the show being canceled once and facing constant criticism from various groups. Family Guy proved that controversial content could be incredibly profitable if it connected with audiences authentically, creating a template that many other shows have tried to follow. The voice cast beyond Seth MacFarlane includes some fascinating stories about how actors were recruited and how their characters evolved. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, was actually hired before the show was even greenlit by Fox. MacFarlane was so impressed by her audition that he wrote additional material specifically for her character, expanding Lois's role far beyond what was originally planned. Mila Kunis, who voices Meg Griffin, was just 14 years old when she started working on the show. Her voice literally changed during the early seasons as she went through adolescence while recording the character. The producers had to make subtle adjustments to accommodate her changing vocal range, creating a unique situation where a cartoon character's voice evolved naturally over time. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars differs significantly from other animated series. While The Simpsons typically has celebrities play versions of themselves, Family Guy often has famous actors' voice, completely original characters, or play historical figures in cutaway gags. This approach allows the show to utilize celebrity talent in more creative and unexpected ways. Some of the most memorable Family Guy moments feature celebrities doing things they would never do on other shows. Precisely because the animated format and the show's irreverent tone give everyone involved permission to be more experimental. The result is guest performances that often become more famous than the celebrity's live-action work. The international versions of Family Guy reveal how the show's humor translates across different cultures and languages. The cutaway gags often require complete restructuring for international audiences because the references are too specifically American to make sense in other countries. Foreign language versions sometimes feature entirely different jokes that serve the same comedic function but use locally relevant references. This localization process has created dozens of different versions of Family Guy that share the same characters and basic structure, but feature significantly different content. In some ways, these international versions are like alternate universe versions of the show, exploring how the same comedic sensibilities might express themselves in different cultural contexts. The technological evolution of Family Guy's production reflects broader changes in the animation industry. Early episodes were produced using techniques that were already becoming obsolete, while recent seasons utilize cutting-edge digital tools that would have been impossible when the show first aired. Despite these technical advances, the show has maintained its distinctive visual style by deliberately limiting how much the animation quality improves. This conscious decision to maintain visual consistency has allowed Family Guy to feel timeless in ways that many other long-running animated series don't achieve. Episodes from different decades can be watched together without jarring visual discontinuities, creating a cohesive viewing experience across more than 20 years of production. The legacy of Family Guy extends beyond entertainment into academic and cultural analysis. Universities offer courses that study the show as an example of postmodern comedy, examining how its cutaway structure reflects contemporary media consumption patterns and attention spans. The show has essentially become a case study in how traditional narrative techniques can be deconstructed while still maintaining audience engagement. As Family Guy continues into its third decade of production, its influence on comedy, animation, and popular culture remains undeniable. From Seth MacFarlane's near-death experience that changed everything, to the unprecedented cancellation and revival that rewrote television business models, the show represents one of the most fascinating success stories in entertainment history. The next time you watch Peter Griffin stumble through another ridiculous adventure or listen to Stewie's sophisticated observations, remember that you're experiencing the result of countless creative decisions, business battles, and pure accidents that somehow combine to create something truly unique in television history. Ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Quahog at 3 a.m? Tonight we're exploring the most bizarre, hilarious, and downright weird facts about Family Guy that'll keep your mind occupied while you drift off to sleep. From hidden Easter eggs to behind-the-scenes secrets that even longtime fans don't know. This collection of random Family Guy trivia is perfect for those late-night moments when you need something entertaining but not too stimulating. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly you're wondering about the strangest details from America's most controversial animated family. Well, you're in luck, because we've gathered dozens of fascinating tidbits that reveal just how deep the rabbit hole goes in Seth MacFarlane's animated universe. Let's start with something that might surprise you about the show's origins. Family Guy actually premiered in 1999, making it older than The Sopranos, Lost, and even The Office. But here's the kicker. The show was canceled not once, but twice by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after 3 seasons, and then again in 2005 after being brought back for a 4th season. What saved it the second time? DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim were so successful that Fox had no choice but to bring it back permanently. Speaking of cancellations, did you know that the famous episode where Stewie and Brian get locked in a bank vault was actually written as a potential series finale? The writers thought the show might not get renewed, so they created this bottle episode as a way to give fans closure while keeping production costs low. It ended up becoming one of the most beloved episodes in the entire series. Here's something that'll make you appreciate the voice acting even more. Seth MacFarlane voices 4 main characters: Peter, Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. But what's really impressive is that he can switch between all these voices seamlessly during recording sessions. The man is basically having conversations with himself for hours at a time. Imagine being in that recording booth and watching him argue with himself as Peter and Stewie. Now let's talk about some hidden details you've probably never noticed. In the opening credits, when the family is sitting on the couch, Stewie is always holding a different object. Sometimes it's a teddy bear, sometimes a ray gun, and occasionally it's something completely random, like a pineapple. The animators change this detail regularly, but it's so subtle that most viewers never pick up on it. The Griffin's address has actually been revealed multiple times throughout the series, but it keeps changing. Sometimes they live at 31 Spooner Street, other times it's 29 Spooner Street. This isn't continuity error. It's an intentional joke about how cartoon families can basically live anywhere the writers need them to live for the sake of a gag. Here's a weird one. Meg's full name is actually Megatron Griffin. This was revealed in one episode as a throwaway joke, but it's technically canon. Her parents named her after the Transformers villain, which honestly explains a lot about why she turned out the way she did. Imagine going through high school with that on your birth certificate. The chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken aren't just random acts of cartoon violence. They're actually parodies of classic action movie fight scenes. Each fight references different films, from They Live to The Matrix. The writers spend enormous amounts of time choreographing these sequences to match specific cinematic moments frame by frame. Speaking of references, Family Guy holds the unofficial record for most pop culture references in a single animated series. The writers keep a database of potential references organized by category, decade, and obscurity level. They literally have spreadsheets dedicated to tracking which celebrities they've already made fun of and which ones are still fair game. Here's something about Brian that might change how you see him. His character was originally supposed to be much more of a background character, like a regular family pet who occasionally made sarcastic comments. But Seth MacFarlane enjoyed voicing him so much that Brian evolved into basically being Seth's mouthpiece for political and social commentary. This is why Brian often sounds like he's giving a college lecture. He essentially is. The Conway Twitty cutaways aren't just random musical interludes. They serve a specific purpose in television production. When episodes run short, the writers can insert these musical segments to pad out the runtime without having to animate new scenes or write additional dialogue. It's brilliant efficiency disguised as absurdist humor. Cleveland's house has been destroyed and rebuilt more times than any other location in the series. The writers keep track of this, and it's actually become a running competition among the staff to see who can come up with the most creative ways to demolish Cleveland's property. His house is basically the Kenny McCormick of buildings. Here's a detail about Quagmire that most people miss. His house number is 29. Peter's is 31, and Cleveland's was 33 before he moved away. But Joe's house number has never been consistently established, which has led to fan theories that he doesn't actually own his house and is just perpetually house-sitting for someone else. The famous "Whose line is it anyway" reference where Peter lists random words isn't actually random. Each word was carefully chosen to represent a different category of Family Guy humor. They're basically a roadmap of the show's comedic philosophy, hidden in plain sight. Stewie's accent has gradually changed over the years, from a thick British aristocrat voice to something more American. This wasn't accidental. Seth MacFarlane has said that maintaining the original accent was physically exhausting, so he's slowly been relaxing it as the series progressed. If you go back and watch early episodes, the difference is striking. The Pucket Brewery where Peter works is actually based on a real brewery in Rhode Island. The exterior shots are rotoscoped from actual footage of the Narragansett Brewery, though the interior is completely fictional. Local Rhode Islanders often spot familiar landmarks in the background of various episodes. Here's something about the show's animation. The characters' eyes are deliberately drawn to be slightly different sizes. Peter's left eye is always drawn slightly larger than his right, which gives him that perpetually confused expression. This asymmetry was added specifically to make him look more dopey and lovable. The reason death appears so frequently in early seasons is because the writers were originally planning to kill off a main character in every season finale, but Fox executives weren't comfortable with the concept. So death became a recurring character instead of a plot device, which is actually much funnier in hindsight. Lois's maiden name is Pewterschmidt, but her middle name has been given as both Marie and Nicole in different episodes. The writers claim this is intentional, suggesting that Lois has been lying about her middle name for years for reasons that will never be explained. The evil monkey in Chris's closet was originally supposed to be revealed as Chris's imaginary friend, but the writers decided it was funnier if he was completely real and just randomly living in their house. This decision led to one of the series' most beloved recurring characters. Here's something about the show's timeline. The Griffins have been celebrating the same holidays for over 20 years of real time, but they never age. However, the writers occasionally drop hints about the passage of time through background details like changing technology and evolving fashion trends in crowd scenes. The reason Peter's boss, Mr. Weed, died in such a bizarre way, choking on dinner rolls while watching Popeye, was because the writers wanted to establish that anyone could die at any time in the Family Guy universe for completely ridiculous reasons. It set the precedent for the show's approach to mortality as comedy. Tricia Takanawa's reporting segments are all written by the same staff writer who used to work in local television news. All of her ridiculous news stories are based on real absurd stories that the writer covered during his journalism career, just exaggerated for comedic effect. The Drunken Clam Bar where Peter and his friends hang out was modeled after Cheers, but the writers deliberately made it seedier and more depressing to contrast with that show's warm, welcoming atmosphere. It's meant to represent the difference between idealized television friendships and actual dysfunctional male bonding. Here's a weird production detail. The show's writers keep a cutaway database with hundreds of unused cutaway gags organized by setup line. If they need a quick cutaway for an episode that's running short, they can search the database by keyword and find something appropriate. Some of these unused cutaways eventually become the basis for entire episodes. The reason Herbert, the elderly neighbor, is so creepy isn't just for shock value, is inexamined. His character is actually a commentary on how society often ignores obvious warning signs about predatory behavior. The writers intentionally make him so obviously suspicious that it becomes absurd that no one in the show takes him seriously. Stewie's football-shaped head wasn't originally intentional. Seth MacFarlane was just a poor artist when he created the character, but the distinctive shape became so iconic that when the animation quality improved, they kept the weird proportions on purpose. The show's musical numbers aren't just random, they're specifically written to parody different Broadway and Hollywood musical styles. Each song is crafted to sound like it could come from a specific era of musical theater, from 1,930 seconds Hollywood musicals to modern Broadway productions. Here's something about the voice acting. When characters sing, their speaking voice actors don't always do the singing. Several characters have dedicated singing voices who are professional Broadway performers. This is why some characters sound noticeably different when they break into song. The chicken that fights Peter is named Ernie, and he has his own detailed backstory that's never fully explained in the show. According to the writers, Ernie has a family, a mortgage, and a completely normal life outside of his inexplicable rivalry with Peter. His motivations remain mysterious intentionally. Roadhouse is referenced more than any other single movie in Family Guy, appearing in over 30 different episodes in various forms. The writers have said this started as an inside joke because they couldn't believe how seriously the movie takes itself, but it evolved into genuine affection for the film's absurdity. The Conway Twitty segments were actually Seth MacFarlane's way of paying tribute to his grandfather, who was a huge country music fan. MacFarlane has said these moments are among his favorites in the entire series because they remind him of watching old variety shows with his grandfather. Meg's unpopularity isn't just a running gag. It's a deliberate commentary on how middle children often get overlooked in family dynamics. The writers have given her hidden depths that occasionally surface, suggesting she's actually the most emotionally intelligent member of the family despite being constantly ignored. The show's animation style deliberately mimics the look of 1980 Saturday morning cartoons, complete with slightly off-model character designs and limited animation techniques. This was intentional, as MacFarlane wanted the show to feel nostalgic and slightly cheap, like the cartoons he grew up watching. Here's a detail about the opening theme. The lyrics were written to sound like a generic sitcom theme song, but they're actually describing a completely dysfunctional family situation. The cheerful melody masks the fact that the words are talking about how nothing in this family works properly. The reason Family Guy episodes often feel like collections of unrelated sketches is because that's exactly what they are. The writers start with a basic premise and then build around it with whatever random ideas they've been wanting to explore. This approach gives the show its unique, chaotic energy. So there you have it. Dozens of random Family Guy facts to occupy your mind as you drift off to sleep. From production secrets to hidden meanings, the world of Family Guy is far more complex and deliberate than it might appear on the surface. Whether you're a longtime fan or just discovering the show, these little details add extra layers to every rewatch. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere in Quahog, Peter Griffin is probably doing something spectacularly stupid, while Stewie plots world domination, and Brian writes terrible novels. The chaos never stops in the Griffin household, and honestly, we wouldn't want it any other way. Picture this. You're lying in bed, eyes heavy, ready to drift off into dreamland. But instead of counting sheep, what if I told you some absolutely wild facts about one of television's most chaotic families? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes disturbing world of Family Guy, with facts so strange, they might just lull you into the most entertaining sleep of your life. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and let me take you on a journey through Quahog that's perfect for your bedtime routine. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just need something to occupy your mind as you wind down, these Family Guy facts will give you plenty to think about as you drift off to sleep. Let's start with something that might surprise you about the show's creation. Family Guy almost never made it to air in the first place. Seth MacFarlane created the pilot when he was just 24 years old, working as a writer and animator for Hanna-Barbera. The original pilot was so different from what we know today that it's almost unrecognizable. Brian wasn't even supposed to be the sophisticated martini-drinking intellectual we know and love. Originally, he was just going to be a regular dog who occasionally spoke. But MacFarlane decided that having a talking dog who acted completely normal would be funnier than having one who was still essentially just a pet. Speaking of Brian, here's a fact that might keep you thinking as you fall asleep. Brian Griffin is technically immortal in some episodes, but ages normally in others. The show has never been consistent about whether Brian ages like a regular dog or if he's somehow exempt from typical canine lifespans. In some episodes, he's mentioned to be around 7 years old in dog years, which would make him middle-aged. But in others, he references events from decades ago, as if he experienced them personally. This inconsistency is just one of many things that make Family Guy's continuity so fascinatingly chaotic. Now, let's talk about Stewie Griffin, the baby genius with questionable intentions. Did you know that Stewie's sexuality has been a subject of debate not just among fans but actually within the show's writing room? Seth MacFarlane has stated in interviews that Stewie is meant to be gay, but the character's sexuality has been portrayed inconsistently throughout the series. In early episodes, Stewie had crushes on various female characters, but later seasons have shown him with clear attractions to male characters. The writers have deliberately kept this ambiguous, which adds another layer to Stewie's already complex character. Here's something that might give you pleasant dreams. The voice actors for Family Guy are incredibly talented beyond just their work on the show. Seth MacFarlane, who voices Peter, Brian, and Stewie, is also an accomplished singer who has released several jazz albums. His singing voice is so good that he's performed with major orchestras and has even done tribute concerts to classic crooners like Frank Sinatra. Imagine Peter Griffin serenading you to sleep with smooth jazz standards. Let's dive into some facts about the show's most controversial character, Peter Griffin himself. Peter's weight has been a running gag throughout the series, but did you know that his exact weight has been mentioned multiple times with wildly different numbers? In some episodes, he's said to weigh around 270 pounds, while in others, the number jumps to over 300. The inconsistency is intentional, reflecting how the show treats Peter's physical characteristics as fluid depending on what's funniest for any given episode. Peter's job history is another source of endless entertainment and confusion. Throughout the series, he's worked at a toy factory, a brewery, various other random jobs, and has even been unemployed for extended periods. But here's what's interesting. The show never explains how the Griffin family maintains their lifestyle during Peter's unemployed periods. They live in a decent house in what appears to be a middle-class neighborhood, yet Peter's employment status seems to have no impact on their standard of living. It's one of those cartoon logic elements that you just have to accept. Speaking of the Griffin house, have you ever noticed that the layout seems to change between episodes? Sometimes there are rooms that appear out of nowhere, and other times, familiar rooms seem to vanish. The basement, in particular, seems to change size and purpose depending on the episode's needs. In some episodes, it's a small storage space, while in others, it's large enough to hold elaborate contraptions or even entire gatherings. This kind of flexible architecture is common in animated shows, but Family Guy takes it to particularly absurd lengths. Let's talk about Meg Griffin, the family's perpetual punching bag. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Meg was originally supposed to be the most normal character in the family, serving as the audience's point of view into this chaotic household. But as the show evolved, the writers found it funnier to make her the target of everyone's abuse. This shift happened gradually over the first few seasons, and by the time it was fully established, Meg had transformed from a relatable teenager into a character whose suffering was played for laughs. The voice of Meg has also changed throughout the series. Originally voiced by Lacey Chabert, the role was taken over by Mila Kunis starting in Season 2. The transition was so seamless that many viewers didn't even notice the change. Kunis was actually still a teenager when she started voicing Meg, making her closer in age to the character than most voice actors are to their animated counterparts. Here's a soothing fact about the show's animation style. Family Guy uses a technique called cutaway gags that allows for infinite creative possibilities. These brief segments, usually introduced by phrases like, "This is worse than the time," allow the animators to create completely different scenarios, time periods, and art styles within a single episode. Some of these cutaways reference obscure pop culture moments, while others create entirely fictional scenarios. The animators have said that creating these cutaways is one of the most enjoyable parts of working on the show because there are virtually no limitations on what they can create. Let's discuss some facts about Quahog, the fictional Rhode Island town where the Griffins live. The town's name is actually a type of clam, which is fitting given Rhode Island's coastal location. But here's what's interesting. The geography of Quahog seems to change depending on the episode's needs. Sometimes it's portrayed as a small town where everyone knows each other, while other times it seems large enough to support multiple shopping districts, airports, and major venues. The town has everything from a small town feel to big city amenities, depending on what the plot requires. The Drunken Clam, the bar where Peter and his friends hang out, is based on real bars that MacFarlane frequented during his college years. The atmosphere and the type of conversations that happen there are drawn from MacFarlane's actual experiences, which explains why the dialogue often feels so authentic despite the absurd situations. Here's something that might help you drift off. The show's theme song is intentionally designed to be catchy and memorable, but it's also shorter than most television theme songs. This was a deliberate choice to maximize the amount of time available for actual content in each episode. The brevity of the theme song allows for more jokes and story development, which is part of why Family Guy episodes often feel packed with content. Let's talk about some of the show's recurring characters and their origins. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffins' oversexed neighbor, was originally conceived as a minor character who would appear occasionally, but the writers found his character so entertaining that he became a regular part of the cast. His distinctive laugh and catchphrase, "giggity," weren't in the original character design, but developed naturally as the voice actor, Seth MacFarlane, experimented with the character's vocal patterns. Cleveland Brown, Peter's friend who eventually got his own spin-off show, was originally going to be a very different character. The writers initially conceived him as being more similar to Peter in personality, but they decided it would be funnier to make him the calm, rational member of the group. This decision led to Cleveland becoming the voice of reason among Peter's friends, often serving as a counterbalance to their more outrageous behavior. Joe Swanson, the paraplegic police officer, was created to add diversity to the show's cast, but the writers were careful to make his disability just one aspect of his character rather than his defining trait. In many episodes, Joe is the most competent and heroic character, often solving problems that the other characters can't handle. His wheelchair is rarely portrayed as a limitation, and he's often shown doing things that would be impossible for anyone, disabled or not. Here's a relaxing fact about the show's production schedule. Family Guy episodes are typically produced months in advance, which allows the animators and voice actors to take their time perfecting each episode. Unlike live-action shows that have to rush to meet weekly deadlines, animated shows like Family Guy can spend weeks on individual scenes, ensuring that every joke lands and every visual gag is perfectly timed. The show's writer's room operates on a collaborative system where anyone can contribute ideas, regardless of their official role on the show. This has led to some of the show's most memorable moments coming from unexpected sources. Sometimes the person responsible for continuity might suggest a joke that becomes central to an episode, or a voice actor might improvise a line that becomes a recurring catchphrase. Let's discuss some facts about the show's cultural impact that might give you something peaceful to think about as you fall asleep. Family Guy has been translated into dozens of languages, and each version faces the challenge of adapting American cultural references for international audiences. Some jokes that work perfectly in English become completely different jokes in other languages, while others are replaced entirely with references that local audiences will understand. The show's influence on internet culture has been enormous. Many of Family Guy's cutaway gags and memorable quotes have become memes that spread far beyond the show's original audience. The phrase, "Oh no," in Peter's distinctive voice, for example, became a popular reaction GIF used in contexts that have nothing to do with the show itself. Here's something interesting about the show's approach to celebrity guest stars. Unlike many animated shows that cast celebrities to voice characters similar to themselves, Family Guy often has famous people voice characters that are completely different from their real personalities. This approach has led to some surprising and entertaining performances that showcase different sides of well-known actors and musicians. The show's approach to continuity is deliberately inconsistent, which actually makes it more relaxing to watch in some ways. You don't need to remember every detail from previous episodes to understand what's happening, because the show often contradicts its own established facts for the sake of a good joke. This means you can watch episodes in any order and still enjoy them fully, which is perfect for casual viewing or when you're trying to wind down. Let's talk about some facts about the show's music and sound design. Family Guy employs a full orchestra for many of its musical numbers, which is unusual for an animated television series. This attention to musical detail means that even throwaway songs and cutaway gags are often surprisingly well-produced and catchy. The show's composers have backgrounds in both television and theatrical music, which explains why many of the musical segments feel like they could work on stage. The sound effects in Family Guy are often created in unusual ways. The iconic sound of Peter falling down and hurting himself, which happens in almost every episode, is actually a combination of several different sounds layered together. The voice actors often provide their own sound effects during recording sessions, which gives the show a more organic feel than if all the sounds were added in post-production. Here's a fact that might help you smile as you drift off. The show's animators often hide small details in backgrounds that only the most observant viewers will notice. These Easter eggs can be anything from references to other shows, inside jokes among the production staff, or even tiny animations that have nothing to do with the main story. Finding these hidden details has become a hobby for some fans, who watch episodes multiple times just to catch things they missed. The show's approach to time and aging is fascinatingly inconsistent. While the characters never seem to get older, the show acknowledges the passage of time in other ways. Technology updates, cultural references change, and real-world events are incorporated into episodes. This creates a strange temporal bubble where the characters exist in a perpetual present that somehow includes decades of cultural history. Let's discuss some production facts. that showcase the incredible amount of work that goes into each episode. A single episode of Family Guy requires thousands of individual drawings, even though much of the animation is now done digitally. Each character expression, each background element, and each special effect needs to be designed and animated individually. The attention to detail is remarkable when you consider how quickly episodes need to be produced. The voice recording process is also more complex than you might expect. While Seth MacFarlane voices multiple characters, he rarely records them in conversation with each other during the same session. Instead, each character's lines are recorded separately, and the conversations are constructed in post-production. This means that MacFarlane has to imagine how his different characters would interact with each other and adjust his performance accordingly. Here's something soothing to consider. Despite all the chaos and controversy surrounding Family Guy, the show has created jobs for hundreds of people over its many seasons. Animators, voice actors, writers, musicians, sound engineers, and countless other professionals have built careers working on this show. In a way, all of this absurd humor has created a small community of creative people who work together to bring these ridiculous stories to life. The show's international success has also led to cultural exchange in unexpected ways. American animators have learned techniques from international studios, while animators from other countries have brought their own cultural perspectives to American television. This cross-pollination of ideas has enriched the medium of animation as a whole. As we near the end of our journey through these Family Guy facts, let's consider something that might give you pleasant dreams. The show's enduring popularity suggests that there's something universally appealing about stories of dysfunctional families who, despite all their problems, somehow stick together. Even though the Griffin family is exaggerated to absurd proportions, there's something recognizable about their dynamics that resonates with audiences around the world. The show's ability to find humor in everyday situations, even when those situations are taken to impossible extremes, reflects a fundamentally optimistic view of life. No matter how bad things get, there's always something to laugh about. This perspective can be oddly comforting when you're trying to wind down from your own day's challenges. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, you can think about this wild, wonderful, and completely unpredictable animated world where anything can happen, where the impossible is routine, and where laughter is always just around the corner. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be as peaceful as a Quahog evening, minus all the explosions and chaos, of course. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone who's just discovered these bizarre facts, I hope this journey through Family Guy's strange universe has given you something entertaining to think about as you fall asleep. Remember, in the world of animation, anything is possible, and tomorrow is just another opportunity for new adventures and unexpected laughs. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice, and somehow clawed its way back from television death each time? Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre world behind one of the most controversial animated shows ever created. And trust me, the stories I'm about to share will blow your mind. From secret celebrity cameos that never made it to air, to the shocking real-life inspiration behind Stewie's character, we're uncovering Family Guy secrets that even diehard fans have never heard before. But first, let me paint you a picture of just how close we came to never having Family Guy at all. Back in 1999, when Seth MacFarlane pitched his idea to Fox executives, he was so broke he was literally sleeping on a friend's couch in Los Angeles. The pilot episode cost over $2 million to produce, making it one of the most expensive animated pilots in television history at that time. And here's the kicker. Fox almost passed on it completely because they thought it was too similar to The Simpsons. The show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, has a background that's absolutely fascinating and explains so much about the show's unique humor. He actually started working in animation when he was just 18 years old, creating a thesis film at the Rhode Island School of Design that would later become the blueprint for Family Guy. That student film, which you can still find online today, featured early versions of Peter, Lois, and their dog Brian, though they looked quite different from what we know now. What most people don't realize is that MacFarlane does the voices for 4 main characters on the show. He's not just Peter Griffin, but also Brian the dog, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. The interesting part is how he developed each voice. Peter's voice was inspired by a security guard MacFarlane knew who had a thick Rhode Island accent. Brian's voice is essentially MacFarlane's natural speaking voice, while Stewie was originally supposed to sound like Rex Harrison from My Fair Lady, though it evolved into something completely different over time. Speaking of Stewie, here's something that might surprise you. The character was initially written as a one-dimensional villain baby who wanted to kill his mother and take over the world. MacFarlane has admitted in interviews that Stewie's sexuality was deliberately kept ambiguous for years, and the writers would often joke about it in the writer's room. The character's development into a more complex, often effeminate genius baby happened gradually over several seasons, and it wasn't planned from the beginning. The show's relationship with censorship has been absolutely wild from day one. There's an entire archive of Family Guy scenes that were deemed too controversial for broadcast television. One episode had a joke about the September 11th attacks that was removed before airing, and another had a sequence involving Mickey Mouse that Disney's lawyers shut down faster than you could say copyright infringement. The writers have always pushed boundaries, sometimes successfully, and sometimes not so much. Here's where things get really interesting. Family Guy was canceled in 2002 after just 3 seasons, and Fox executives thought that was the end of it. But something unprecedented happened in television history. The show found a massive second life through DVD sales and reruns on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim programming block. The DVD sales were so strong that they actually outsold many primetime dramas that were still on the air. This success story became a case study in how a show could resurrect itself through alternative distribution methods. The fan campaign to bring the show back was unlike anything television had seen before. This was before social media as we know it today, so fans organized through message boards, early blogs, and even physical petitions. They sent thousands of letters to Fox executives, and some fans even sent baby bottles and diapers as a reference to Stewie. The campaign worked, and in 2005, Family Guy returned for a 4th season, making it one of the first canceled shows to be revived due to fan demand and DVD sales. But then lightning struck twice, and the show was canceled again in 2002 and brought back again in 2005, making it the first show in television history to be canceled and revived twice. This second cancellation and revival story is even more dramatic than the first. The show's ratings had dipped during its 3rd season, and Fox executives felt it had run its course. However, the DVD sales for the first 3 seasons were so astronomical that they couldn't ignore the numbers. The voice acting process for Family Guy is absolutely fascinating and different from most animated shows. Unlike many animated series where actors record their lines separately, the main Family Guy cast often records together in the same room. This creates a more natural flow of dialogue and allows for improvisation that you can sometimes hear in the final episodes. Seth MacFarlane has said that some of the funniest moments in the show came from spontaneous interactions during these group recording sessions. One of the most mind-blowing facts about the show involves the famous chicken fight scenes between Peter Griffin and Ernie the giant chicken. These elaborate fight sequences, which can last several minutes, actually cost more to animate than entire episodes of some other animated shows. The animators have to create detailed fight choreography, multiple background locations, and complex character movements. MacFarlane has joked that these scenes are his way of burning through the show's animation budget in the most entertaining way possible. The show's cutaway gags, which are basically mini-sketches that interrupt the main storyline, weren't originally part of the show's format. They were added during the 2nd season as a way to incorporate more jokes and references that didn't fit naturally into the main plot. These cutaways became so popular that they essentially became the show's signature style, influencing countless other animated comedies that followed. Family Guy has had some absolutely incredible celebrity guest stars over the years, but many people don't know about the ones who almost appeared but didn't. Michael Jackson was reportedly interested in doing a voice on the show in the early 2000s, but legal complications prevented it from happening. Similarly, several A-list actors have recorded guest appearances that were later cut from episodes due to various reasons, from scheduling conflicts to content concerns. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond just entertainment. Family Guy references and memes have become part of everyday internet language. Phrases like, "that really grinds my gears," and "giggity" have entered the cultural lexicon. The show has been referenced in academic papers about humor, animation, and cultural commentary. Some universities have actually used Family Guy episodes as case studies in media studies courses. Here's something that might keep you up thinking about it. The show has predicted several real-world events with uncanny accuracy. There's an episode from 2005 that jokes about Kevin Spacey in a way that seems eerily prescient given later revelations about the actor. Another episode made jokes about certain political figures that seemed outlandish at the time but became remarkably relevant years later. Whether these are coincidences or the writers having incredible insight into human nature is up for debate. The international versions of Family Guy are absolutely wild and worth exploring if you're curious about cultural adaptation. The show has been dubbed into dozens of languages, and each version has had to navigate different cultural sensitivities and humor styles. The German version, for example, had to completely rewrite many jokes because direct translations didn't make sense or weren't funny in that cultural context. Some countries have banned certain episodes entirely while embracing others. The relationship between Family Guy and The Simpsons has been fascinating to watch evolve over the years. Initially, there was definitely some tension, with Simpsons creator Matt Groening making pointed comments about Family Guy being derivative. However, this led to one of the most brilliant crossover episodes in animated television history, where the two families actually met and interacted. The production of this crossover episode required unprecedented cooperation between two different animation studios and networks. Behind the scenes, the Family Guy writing room operates differently from most television shows. The writers often compete to see who can come up with the most outrageous or offensive joke, with the understanding that most of these will never make it to air. This competitive atmosphere has created some of the show's most memorable moments, but it's also led to some jokes that had to be completely rewritten or abandoned during the production process. The show's approach to social and political commentary has evolved significantly over its run. Early episodes were primarily focused on absurd humor and pop culture references, but later seasons began incorporating more direct political satire and social commentary. This evolution has been both praised and criticized, with some fans preferring the original format and others appreciating the show's willingness to tackle serious topics through humor. MacFarlane's decision to step back from day-to-day involvement in the show after several seasons was a turning point that many fans noticed. His reduced involvement allowed other writers and producers to put their stamp on the show, leading to subtle but noticeable changes in humor, style, and character development. This transition period created some of the most experimental episodes in the show's history. The merchandising empire that Family Guy has built is absolutely staggering. From action figures to clothing lines, from video games to board games, the show has spawned an entire industry of products. Some of the most interesting merchandise includes items that reference the show's most obscure jokes, suggesting that the creators understand their audience's deep knowledge of the series. As we wind down our journey through these fascinating Family Guy facts, it's worth reflecting on how this show that almost never existed became such a cultural phenomenon. From sleeping on couches to creating a multi-million-dollar franchise, from cancellation to resurrection, from controversy to cultural impact, Family Guy represents something unique in entertainment history. The show continues to evolve and surprise audiences, and who knows what wild facts we'll be sharing about it in another 20 years. Sweet dreams, and remember, somewhere out there, Seth MacFarlane is probably working on another joke that will either make you laugh until you cry or shake your head in disbelief. Possibly both at the same time. What if I told you that behind the perfect housewife facade lies one of television's most twisted characters? The woman you think you know as the voice of reason in the Griffin household has actually murdered multiple people, cheated on her husband at least 12 times, and may have given birth to a child who isn't even his. This is the untold story of Lois Griffin, and trust me, it's darker than you ever imagined. Most people see Lois as the long-suffering wife who somehow tolerates Peter's antics while keeping their chaotic family together. But that's exactly what she wants you to think. The reality is that Lois Griffin has one of the most disturbing character arcs in animated television, filled with secrets that would make even the most hardened criminal blush. From her privileged upbringing to her descent into madness, every chapter of her life reveals new layers of dysfunction that will completely change how you see this seemingly innocent character. Let me take you back to where it all began. Lois wasn't always a Griffin. She was born Lois Pewterschmidt into one of the most powerful and dysfunctional families on the East Coast. Picture this, a sprawling mansion in Newport, Rhode Island, where money flowed like water, but emotional warmth was as rare as honest politicians. Her father, Carter Pewterschmidt, built an empire on ruthless business practices, while her mother, Babs, played the role of the perfect trophy wife, both too busy with their own ambitions. to give their children the love they desperately needed. But here's where the story takes its first dark turn. Lois had a brother named Patrick, and this family secret will haunt you. As a young child, Patrick witnessed something so traumatic involving his mother that it broke his mind completely. Carter's solution wasn't therapy or family healing. He had his own son shipped off to a mental institution and erased from family history like he never existed. This wasn't just neglect. This was calculated, emotional brutality that would set the tone for how this family handled problems, make them disappear. Growing up in this environment, Lois and her sister Carol developed completely different survival mechanisms. Carol became desperate for male attention, rushing into relationship after relationship, collecting divorces like trophies. By the time we meet her, she's been married and divorced 8 times. Each failed relationship a symptom of the emotional void their parents created. But Lois chose a different path. Rebellion disguised as conformity. As a teenager, Lois discovered a passion for modeling. For once, she had found something that made her feel alive, something that was hers. But when a legitimate modeling contract was offered, Carter crushed her dreams without hesitation. His exact words were chilling. His daughter would not lower herself to such work. This wasn't parental protection. This was control, masked as concern for social status. And this moment planted the first seeds of the resentment that would later explode into her adult dysfunction. College became Lois's escape hatch, but instead of finding freedom, she found chaos. At Kent State University, she threw herself into everything her controlling father had forbidden. She partied with reckless abandon, broke every rule she could find, and made choices that would haunt her for decades. The most shocking of these was starring in an adult film, not for money or fame, but as the ultimate act of rebellion against her family's pristine image. Think about the psychology here. This wasn't some wild phase or momentary lapse in judgment. This was a young woman so damaged by emotional neglect and control that she was willing to do anything to feel like she had agency over her own life. The fact that she shared this secret so casually with a reporter she barely knew tells us everything about her desperate need for authenticity in a life built on lies and appearances. But the real bombshell comes when we examine how she met Peter Griffin. Here's where the story becomes almost too bizarre to believe. Peter wasn't some college boyfriend or family friend. He was literally hired as a pool boy to clean her family's estate. Picture the scene. The refined daughter of a billionaire family falls for a man whose greatest talent is making fart jokes. On the surface, it looks like a classic opposites attract romance. But dig deeper, and you'll see the psychological warfare at play. Lois choosing Peter wasn't love at first sight. It was the nuclear option in her war against her father's expectations. Carter had controlled every aspect of her life, from her career choices to her social circle. So she chose the one person guaranteed to horrify him, a working-class man with 0 social graces and fewer brain cells. This wasn't romance. This was revenge, with wedding vows. When Carter discovered their relationship, his reaction was swift and brutal. He had Peter knocked, unconscious and dumped in the middle of the ocean like some kind of mob hit. But Peter survived, and here's where things get interesting. Carter then offered Peter $1 million to walk away forever. Peter's response reveals something crucial about their dynamic. He turned down the money, claiming Lois was worth more to him than cash. But his exact words were telling. He said she was worthless to him, which is why he loved her. This wasn't the romantic declaration it appeared to be. This was 2 damaged people finding each other through mutual dysfunction. Peter saw in Lois someone who wouldn't judge his failures because she was running from her own. Lois saw in Peter the ultimate weapon against her family's suffocating expectations. Their love story wasn't built on compatibility or shared values. It was built on shared rebellion against the lives they were supposed to live. The cracks in this foundation became obvious almost immediately. When they tried to start fresh, after college, they broke up. Lois got engaged to Tom Tucker, a much more logical choice that her family approved of. But Peter couldn't let go, not because of love, but because losing Lois meant losing his identity as the rebel who stole the rich girl. So he crashed her wedding in a desperate last-ditch effort to reclaim what he saw as his greatest achievement. What happened next reveals the true toxicity of their relationship. Lois was already pregnant with Meg when they eloped, which means their entire marriage was built on necessity rather than choice. She literally couldn't back out even if she wanted to. This detail reframes their entire relationship. Every fight, every moment of dysfunction, every terrible decision can be traced back to this moment when two people trapped themselves in a marriage neither really wanted. Parenthood didn't fix their problems. It amplified them exponentially. Their first instinct as new parents was to abandon Meg at a fire station. When that failed, they took her home to Spooner Street, but the damage was already done. This child represented everything wrong with their relationship. Unplanned, unwanted, and a constant reminder of the life neither had chosen. As more children arrived, Lois's parenting style became increasingly unhinged. With Meg, she started as a protective mother, but gradually became cruel and dismissive. The most heartbreaking example is when Meg pours her heart out, telling Lois she loves her, and Lois can't bring herself to say it back. This isn't just poor parenting. This is emotional abandonment that mirrors her own childhood trauma. But Meg isn't the only victim of Lois's maternal dysfunction. She's physically abused Stewie, getting so desperate for pills that she dunked his head in a toilet to retrieve one that fell in. She ran over him with her car and immediately tried to cover it up, rather than face the consequences. These aren't accidents or momentary lapses. They're patterns of behavior that reveals someone completely detached from normal parental instincts. Even with Chris, supposedly her favorite, she's done things that cross every line of appropriate motherly behavior. When rumors spread that he was involved with an attractive teacher, instead of shutting down the inappropriate speculation, she confirmed it herself. This isn't protective parenting. This is a woman so desperate for attention that she'll exploit her own children to get it. The drug addiction storyline reveals just how far Lois has fallen from her privileged upbringing. This isn't recreational use or social experimentation. This is full-blown addiction that turns her into a criminal. She starts dealing drugs, becomes a kleptomaniac, and eventually graduates to violent crime. The woman who grew up in mansions is now poisoning baristas and kidnapping innocent people to maintain her position as the best customer at a coffee shop. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Lois's character is her complete moral flexibility. She runs for mayor claiming to fight corruption, then immediately becomes as corrupt as the person she replaced. She allows oil companies to dump waste in the city's water supply for money. This isn't political compromise. This is selling out an entire community for personal gain. Her relationship with violence is equally troubling. She's admitted to killing multiple people, including a waitress on their honeymoon as part of some sick game with Peter. She traumatized Chris by revealing she'd killed someone with her car, then casually mentioned that all mothers have killed someone, as if murder was just another household chore. The pattern becomes clear when you look at her complete story. Every major decision in Lois's life has been driven by one of two motives: rebelling against her family's expectations, or covering up the consequences of previous rebellions. She chose Peter to spite her father. She had children because she was trapped. She became addicted to drugs to cope with her choices. She turned to crime to support her addictions. Each step led inevitably to the next in a downward spiral that shows no signs of stopping. Her infidelity adds another layer to this psychological profile. Lois hasn't just cheated on Peter occasionally. She's been systematically unfaithful throughout their entire marriage. She's had affairs with Bill Clinton, rock stars from the 80s, and even Peter's own half-brother. The most shocking revelation is her admission that Chris might not even be Peter's biological son, the result of an affair with actor Philip Seymour Hoffman. This isn't a woman struggling with temptation. This is someone who views marriage vows as suggestions rather than commitments. Her pattern of cheating reveals someone incapable of genuine intimacy, constantly seeking validation from new partners because she's never resolved the emotional damage from her childhood. The psychological implications become Even more disturbing when you consider her relationships with Brian and Quagmire. Both men have been obsessed with her for years, and in alternate timelines, she's married both of them. This suggests that her appeal isn't based on genuine connection, but on some kind of emotional unavailability that draws damaged men to her like moths to a flame. Her bisexual tendencies, while potentially representing healthy sexual exploration, fit the same pattern. She kisses women impulsively, fantasizes about running away with female cashiers, and engages in passionate encounters with friends' wives. But these aren't expressions of genuine sexual identity. They're more rebellion, more ways to shock and transgress against social expectations. As Lois ages, the consequences of her choices begin catching up with her. By her 50th birthday, doctors are warning she might not survive much longer due to the physical toll of her lifestyle and the violence she's experienced. Stewie planted a time bomb in her uterus as an infant, and Chris nearly killed her during childbirth. These details aren't just dark humor. They're metaphors for how her own children have become weapons turned against her, the inevitable result of her toxic parenting. The future episodes show Lois and Peter still together in their retirement home. But this isn't a happy ending. It's two people too damaged and codependent to separate, even when they probably should. Their adult children push them into assisted living, suggesting that even as grown-ups, the Griffin kids can't wait to get their parents out of their lives. But here's what makes Lois truly fascinating as a character. She's not entirely unsympathetic. Every terrible thing she's done can be traced back to the emotional neglect and control she experienced as a child. Her father crushed her dreams and treated her like a possession. Her mother was absent and cold. Her brother was literally erased from family history when he became inconvenient. Is it any wonder she grew up incapable of healthy relationships or appropriate boundaries? The tragedy of Lois Griffin isn't that she became a terrible person. It's that she never had a real chance to become anything else. Every relationship in her life has been transactional or manipulative. She learned early that love comes with conditions and that people will abandon you if you become inconvenient. So she became someone who abandons others first, who cheats before being cheated on, who hurts before being hurt. Her criminal behavior isn't random chaos. It's the logical endpoint of a life spent learning that rules don't apply to people with money and power. Her father built an empire through ruthless business practices and made problems disappear through violence and money. Is it surprising that his daughter grew up thinking murder and corruption were just more extreme versions of normal problem solving? The drug addiction storyline reveals someone desperately trying to numb the pain of a life she never wanted. The cheating shows someone searching for connection she's never experienced. The violent outbursts demonstrate someone who learned early that force and manipulation get better results than honesty and vulnerability. Even her relationship with Peter, dysfunctional as it is, represents her attempt to break free from the toxic patterns of her childhood. She chose someone completely different from her father, someone who couldn't control or manipulate her through money or social pressure. The problem is that she chose someone equally damaged, someone whose emotional instability matched her own. The most disturbing aspect of Lois's story is how it reflects real-world patterns of generational trauma. Children who grow up in emotionally abusive environments often struggle to form healthy relationships as adults. They may seek out partners who replicate familiar patterns of dysfunction because chaos feels like home. They may become abusive parents themselves, not out of malice, but because they never learned healthy parenting models. Lois's story is a masterclass in how privilege can't protect children from emotional damage. All the money in the world couldn't give her what she really needed. Parents who loved her unconditionally and supported her dreams. Instead, she got parents who treated her like a business asset and a social accessory, valued only for how she reflected on their reputation. The brilliance of her character lies in how the show presents her as both victim and villain simultaneously. Yes, she's done terrible things that hurt innocent people. But understanding why she did them doesn't excuse the behavior. It explains how someone becomes capable of such actions. She's a cautionary tale about what happens when children don't receive the emotional foundation they need to become healthy adults. Her relationship with her own children reflects this cycle of dysfunction. She can't give them what she never received herself. Her inability to say "I love you" to Meg isn't just cruelty. It's the echo of parents who never said those words to her. Her physical abuse of Stewie mirrors the emotional violence she experienced growing up. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Lois's character is how normal she appears on the surface. She's articulate, intelligent, and socially skilled when she needs to be. She can play the role of the concerned mother, the devoted wife, the responsible citizen. This ability to present a functional facade while being completely broken inside makes her more dangerous than someone whose dysfunction is obvious. The show's genius lies in slowly revealing the depths of her damage over time. Early episodes presented her as the reasonable one, the moral center of the family. But as the series progressed, each new revelation stripped away another layer of that facade until we saw the broken person underneath. This isn't character assassination. It's archaeological excavation, uncovering the psychological damage that was always there but carefully hidden. Looking at Lois Griffin's complete story, we see a masterpiece of character development that illustrates how childhood trauma can echo through generations. She's not just a cartoon character making bad choices for laughs. She's a complex psychological portrait of someone whose entire life has been shaped by early emotional wounds that never healed. Her story serves as a dark mirror to the American dream, showing how wealth and privilege can create their own forms of destruction. The Pewterschmidt family had everything money could buy, but nothing that actually mattered. And their daughter grew up to become living proof that you can't buy emotional health or authentic human connection. The most disturbing realization about Lois Griffin is that she's not an anomaly. She's a recognizable type. We all know people who seem to have everything together on the surface, but whose personal lives are complete disasters. We see them in positions of power, making decisions that affect others while being completely incapable of managing their own emotional lives. Lois Griffin's entire story is a cautionary tale about the price of emotional neglect and the generational transmission of trauma. She started as a victim of her parents' dysfunction and became the architect of her children's future therapy bills. Her legacy isn't the crimes she's committed or the people she's hurt. It's the cycle of damage that will likely continue through her own children unless they find ways to break free from the patterns she's established. In the end, Lois Griffin represents one of television's most complex and disturbing character studies. She's simultaneously the victim of generational trauma and the perpetrator of new trauma, a woman whose entire life has been shaped by her unsuccessful attempts to escape the emotional prison her parents built around her childhood. Understanding her story doesn't excuse her actions, but it does explain how someone becomes capable of such systematic dysfunction while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. The brilliance of her character lies not in the shocking things she does, but in how those actions reflect deeper patterns of psychological damage that make perfect sense once you understand where she came from. She's not crazy. She's the logical product of her environment, which makes her story both more tragic and more terrifying than any random acts of villainy could ever be.